Are you getting everything you can out of your weighted vest or ruck plate carrier? Or are a few simple mistakes limiting your results? In this episode, we separate fact from fiction when it comes to weighted vest training. We discuss who benefits most from using a weighted vest, how it compares to rucking with a rucksack, when each is the better choice, common mistakes to avoid, and how to use a weighted vest safely to improve your fitness without interfering with other training. My guest today is Philip Pape. Philip is a nutrition coach, fitness educator, and host of the Wits Weights podcast, where he helps busy adults build muscle, lose fat, and improve their health through evidence based nutrition and training strategies. He's known for taking complicated fitness research and turning it into practical advice that people can actually use. Today, he's joining us to separate fact from fiction when it comes to weighted vest and rucking. All right, please enjoy my conversation with Philip Pape. Philip, thanks so much for joining me today here on the Rutgers Edge podcast. I've been listening to your podcast a lot recently called Wits and Weights. I've gained a lot of information from listening to your podcast, specifically recently on an episode about what the brain is doing when we exercise, which is really cool. But really excited to have you here. And one of the things I like most about your approach to exercise is you kind of approach it with some sort of, I don't want to say skepticism, but you're maybe, I don't know how you would describe it, but optimistically cautious, which I think serves researchers really well to dive into the depths of what real science is showing about a particular subject. And I'm really curious to see what you have to say about rucking, specifically working out with weighted vests today. And just really happy to have you here, Philip. So welcome again.
Man, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I know you're only like 20, 30 episodes in, but I thought you were a seasoned podcaster when I checked you out. And I've actually learned quite a bit about rucking from you just listening to your show, and that would help me and my clients. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. Skeptical is definitely the word. I would say science is built on asking questions and never knowing what we think we know. So,
Yeah.
if you could ever challenge yourself and be open to it. And the other thing is, anybody that's making a claim with complete certainty, I question them immediately because it's
Mhm.
almost never the case.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely right. Thanks for the kind words. I really appreciate that, Philip.
Sure, man. Yeah.
I say
Thanks
we
for having me
we
on.
we go ahead and peel the layers off of your critical thinking brain. So when rucking or working out with a weighted vest comes to mind, or when you first learned about it, I'm curious, like what were some of the first questions that you had about it in terms of like its legitimacy?
The first I heard about weighted vests specifically came long after I learned about rucking. So rucking, I used to do CrossFit actually for years. So I was kind of tied into that world of the military side where some of the rucking elements came in, as well as working out with a rucksack, which is a whole separate beast. But weighted vests, I would say in the last year and a half, it became kind of a big trend on social media, especially women in my audience, because I speak a lot to people over 40 and probably two-thirds are women. And I don't know why I attract a lot of women. It could just be because that's how the population shakes out in terms of who's looking for this kind of advice. But they'd say, hey, should I wear a vest to get stronger? And the question's always, what's your goal? Why do you ask? What did you hear? What did you read online?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What TikTok did you watch? Right.
Where is this coming from? And, I would say almost invariably, at least early on, it was like, well, maybe I don't have to lift weights, or maybe I don't have to, there's this new thing, there's this new solution, there's this new quick fix. It's kind of like the vibration plates for, so you don't even have to lift weights.
Right.
And all of these things are tools, and I think they all have benefits. Even the vibration plates have benefits, believe it or not, for like reversing osteoporosis in its own little way. So that's kind of the context I heard about it. And immediately
Hmm.
when I hear that, I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? Okay, influencers on social media telling you they have their weighted vest program. You don't have to go in the gym. Look how easy it is. It's always like, we'll solve this, so you can lose weight without this struggle over here, like without this hard work or effort over here. So that's the
Yeah.
context I learned about it. And honestly, in my opinion, weighted vests and rucking, I mean, they're kind of have a lot of overlap. Just center of gravity is a little different and like distribution's different. But I kind of treat them a little bit interchangeably in my context, even though there's different applications out there. I understand.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that you have seen maybe more women getting interest in weighted vests.
Mhm.
From what I observed, I think I read a handful of studies in preparation for our conversation today, and like a majority of them I think the population that they used for the study were like, I think majority of them were women, which is interesting. I'm not sure if it was tailored that way or if it just shook out that way, but I thought that was kind of interesting. But let's go ahead and start talking about the science of compounding with working out with the weighted vest. If you're down, um, in your research, I guess like what did you come across when they were talking about like physiologically what's going on when someone's working out with a weighted vest? Did you come across that? Did you see
Yeah,
anything that
there
you
are
read?
there are quite a few studies on, like, loaded carries, loading your body, and then also studies where people literally live their lives wearing a vest, so there's all different spectrum of that. Um, uh, we have to look at what outcome we're trying to measure. So one measure is expenditure, just like how many calories you burn, right? That's one thing people care about. And from that perspective, I think the studies just validate pure linear relationship more or less with if you add 10% weight to your body, you're going to burn you would think 10% more, but it's more like two-thirds of that.
Hmm.
And that's because your body is burning calories for other things that aren't correlated with your mass, right? So if you added, if I, as a 180-pound person, added like 40 pounds to my back, and then I go for a walk, whatever I would burn in an hour, calories, active calories I'll burn in an hour, add about two
Two.
thirds of the extra percentage to that. So it might be like an extra, say, 20 calories over a half hour walk, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of cool. Like that's an interesting thing because one thing I like to do is save time. And so
Hmm.
for a lot of my clients and listeners, I'm like, okay, you're very busy. I get it. Well, if you're going to go for a half hour walk anyway, how do we use that half hour more effectively? Well, we could walk faster.
Hmm.
We can go on an incline. We can add weight. And so that's kind of where that comes from. There are other studies looking at weighted vests and load and muscle and bone and connective tissue and all of that. And
Hmm.
one of them was the Invest trial. You aware of that one? That's like a big one at
No.
JAMA. That was last year. So
Okay.
that was like 150 adults, older adults, and they lost weight they lost like 10% of the body weight over a year. One group wore a weighted vest most of the day to make up for the weight they lost.
Okay.
And by the way, I had someone on my show. She was a diabetes expert. She uses this technique with her clients. As they lose weight, she adds weighted vest weight to make up for it,
Oh.
and kind of accelerate the process. Yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
interesting, right?
Yeah.
And the vest did not prevent the loss of bone, and I think it was hip bones that they were measuring. It was no better than the group that lost weight without the vest, and also than the resistance training group either. So, and this is somebody, her name is Kristen Beavers, and she had a pilot study where it showed the vest might help. And I think a lot of people ran with this on social media that
Hmm.
showed the vest might help for bone loss. And then when they actually did the bigger trial, they found that it didn't work. And that's, I think, because of what you talk about a lot of times on the show. Um, Progressive overload, sufficient load to challenge your body and actually cause your bone density to increase requires added weight or reps or difficulty over time. So you're
Yeah.
going to tap out really quickly with a weighted vest. And that's kind of the premise of a lot of these studies that have been, the end of the
Yeah.
day, nothing exciting, but there are some unique uses for these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've sort of come across the same ideas that you
Yeah.
presented, and it's yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I saw that came out of some of the research I read was like and just having conversations with former guests on the show. I'm thinking of Mike Smith is like you talk about weight loss. Well, that's exactly what he was doing to lose weight. He was rucking, and he pointed out he liked rucking so much or working out with his weighted vest so much that like sure he was losing weight, but he wasn't losing his muscle mass at the same time,
Mm.
which very important to him and should be important to everybody trying to drop weight. Is that you don't want to lose muscle mass in that process. I totally agree with you on that. Um, and a lot of people are, I don't know, I have seen recently talk about like compounding results, and I think weighted vest works really well in this space. Um, like, what is I don't know if you can speak to this. Like, what does that mean in terms of like mechanically on our body? Can you talk to that? I mean, like outside of like yeah, like building muscle, but like any other like mechanics improvement when you like compound, like when you throw a weighted vest on to work out.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, you've got stabilization and balance involved. A return to mobility, I would say, for people who are weaker.
Mm.
I guess I see it as I put the population into a couple different phases, right? There's the population who maybe is recovering from injury and needs to get back to full mobility, where something like this can help. We also have the population who's just very sedentary, maybe very weak, maybe older, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for them, it's like a great introductory way to add more challenge to their body and to their load. I think people think in terms of like single joints, but we should be thinking in terms of movement patterns, which
Mhm.
again, when we talk about the gym, would be things like squatting and hinging. But with a weighted vest, if you're doing what you do anyway, now you're just doing it under a little more exertion and load. However, I do think there's like we don't want to use it as a substitute, right,
Sure.
for lifting. And by the way, I think I listened to one of your episodes with the guy who he does a lot of lifting routines while wearing the vest or while
Yeah.
wearing a rucksack, right?
Yep.
Which to me, that's still lifting. You're making it harder on yourself, and you may or may not use load. What matters is you're making it harder over time. So I
Yeah.
think like biomechanically, there's nothing wrong with it, and it could be helpful, like, with a weighted vest specifically because it's symmetrical around your
Mhm.
body as opposed to, the rucksack, but I do understand, like, a rucksack can offer, more ability to have to use your stabilizer muscles, for example.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Talking about stabilizer muscles, that's one of the reasons you wanna start, light, almost not too light, but you definitely don't wanna go hard too quickly because that's where you can kinda get in trouble. Those stabilizer muscles aren't worked out nearly as much as, your targeted muscles that you're hitting in the gym, and they're not strong enough to, well, stabilize you while you're going through these different motions, and so that's when you can kinda pull something or strain something. Have you ever do you work out with a weighted vest? I personally don't. I don't do that too much, strength training. My strength training comes from, tossing the ruck and sandbag around, but are you in the gym working out with a weighted vest or anything like that?
I do not, I do not.
Mhm.
I ruck as, more of a cardio and conditioning activity,
Yeah.
than a strength training activity. And but that's look, I'm deadlifting 435 pounds, right? So
Yeah.
like a vest or a rucksack, it's gonna have to fit in for me in an efficient way. So again, if you're wearing it while doing something, that's awesome. And now you put the idea in my head, like, should I try it? But
Yeah.
most of the people I talk to again are women who are curious,
Yeah.
sometimes men who are like, "Hey, should I go start doing specific routines with the weighted vest?" And I'm like, "Well, as long as it doesn't take away from the other things you're trying to do, and you can kind of combine it into your week efficiently." So that's why for a lot of people, and we can do this toward the end of today's episode, we can give some different like routines or progressions or whatever for folks to, if they just want to progress as a walking tool to make their walking harder. I would say I'm not the expert on like wearing it while working out, and I don't think you need to once you're like 3 or 4 weeks into your lifting journey, you're probably tapped out already. That
Mhm.
vest is gonna have to be ridiculously heavy, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, and there are certain, I guess, workouts you probably shouldn't. I mean,
Shouldn't.
not an expert here, but yeah, based off the
Yeah,
research I
yeah.
read, maybe, yeah, like Olympic lifts may not be the best idea to also be wearing a weighted vest, and also maybe something with if you're approaching it new, maybe not, high rep sort of, what's the like, calisthenics maybe may not be the best idea, but,
Yeah, well, actually, speaking of that, like, it
mhm,
depends on how we define calisthenics, but if we think of very effective compound bodyweight exercises like chin-ups or, dips or something like that, that's a perfect place I could
mhm,
see using it. Again, depends on how much weight you need. Like, a bigger guy who's pretty strong probably just needs a dip belt hanging a couple 45s off his waist, you know what I mean?
right, yeah,
But that's very unwieldy in other contexts. So, yeah, anything that involves, decline push-ups, really anything in the gym where you're kind of doing a bodyweight version of it, and now you wanna add some load. I could even see, certain loaded ab work too, for that. So yeah, it's a great question. I know I'm coming on here. I don't know if you brought me on thinking I'm an expert in like working out with a weighted vest, but I look more into the science of should we use it, when should we use it, and in many cases you don't need to use it.
yeah, yeah, agreed. Um, Now I was thinking about, like, some, like, common mistakes when changing up your, like, workout routine. And we hit on a couple of them, but, I think there's, like, I don't know what it is, but for rucking in general, when people start throwing a ruck on for the first time, tend to go too heavy too fast. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I know that like if someone were to start adding a weighted vest, probably not the best idea to go too heavy too quickly. You're just asking for trouble. Do you have any idea of like maybe other potential mistakes or errors that people might get themselves into when throwing on a weighted vest or putting something new into their workout routine?
Yeah, for sure. And just to hit on the one you just mentioned, I mean, I think connective tissue is the bottleneck for a lot of folks, especially when
Mm,
you're older and you've never done it. If you go out with with 50 pounds on your back and you're not very well conditioned for it, and then you walk a ton, I mean, you're going to feel it everywhere. You're going to be super sore. That's not the worst thing in the world, right? Because novelty always brings some soreness. I mean, the first time I did it, I felt in my traps. I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's something to this, right?
yeah,
But before your tendons, ligaments, bones, muscle are ready, your connective tissue starts to take the load. So I would treat it just like lifting weights. People always ask, how much do I lift for my first session? It's like you need to warm up, find the place where it's relatively easy to do like 15 or 20 reps, go a little heavier than that. And if your target rep range is 8 to 12, that's probably a good starting point for your first set. And it's going to look super light compared to the next guy in the gym, but you're not comparing to the next guy or gal, you're
yeah,
comparing to yourself. So that's the same thing with rucking or weighted vests is just start at a little bit more, 5% more of your body weight.
yeah,
That is one I just wanted to mention, but, thinking that, like, heavier is always better, I think there's multiple variables involved. So if we're talking walking, for example, you have your incline, you have your speed, and then you have your weight, and some people might find that a good moderate weight is better than a heavier weight because a heavier weight just it, like, wins you and it throws you off and it puts you in a bad, position sometimes on your walks, and on a steep incline, it could actually make it, it could screw up your biomechanics a little, I've seen when
sure.
people go too heavy on an incline. So that's another mistake. I would say, the only other one would be, like, expecting it to replace lifting weights, honestly, or to fix your bones or anything. Like, I think that's a really important message that
Yeah.
you still need to have resistance training involved somehow, even if you are incorporating the vest or the rucksack.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And when you're talking about adding, uh, you know, the things to your workouts to make it more difficult, like walking, using an incline. I know when I first started rucking and I had the rucksack on, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna start doing some like hill repeats or something like that. And talking about biomechanics, man, you need the right kind of form to do that. I was a mess. I wasn't
Where'd
balanced.
you get? Where'd you get shin splints or where'd you get the
Oh.
pain?
Oh,
Like,
I have historic ankle issues, so my
yeah, yeah.
ankle was flared up, and I tweaked my knee a little bit,
Mhm.
and, my
Yeah.
quads were insane. Yeah, it was just
Yeah,
a
like,
bad.
think of coming downhill on a hike with the roots and everything, and now you've got this
Yeah.
big thing pushing you. I think of the video game what's the video game that where the guy carries the thing on his back? You know what I'm talking about. Guys who are into gaming, this guy, he's the
I
porter that has to, like, transfer. He carries, like, huge stacks of stuff on his back, you
I don't
know?
know. I'm not a gamer.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Oregon Trail that is definitely not
No, no,
the
no.
answer there. I don't know. I can't help you there, Philip, but,
It's all good,
yeah,
it's all good.
you gotta have the right form. If you don't, it's yeah, you're asking for trouble. I know that you have a I guess, would you call it a nutrition, service or nutrition coaching program? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I'm a nutrition coach, so everything that I do is really I guess holistic is what you say, it's integrated between nutrition and training.
So when it comes to working out with additional load, obviously your body's well, we talked about the weight loss factor with burning more calories. If someone didn't want to burn calories while working out with a weighted vest, it's for weight loss. They're trying to put on muscle. Any tips you would provide to them to kind of help them out? I mean, is it just eat more calories or change what you're eating?
Oh, man, this is a whole separate topic, but,
It
like,
is, yeah,
first
no, it's kind of
first, that
shift.
statement we need to unpack that statement of they don't want to wear a vest to burn calories to lose weight. So, just to be clear, like, um, I think of this there's this term energy flux, right? Which is the idea of moving more and eating more, because the world is stuck in a eat less, move more mentality. The
Hmm.
thought being that I need to starve myself and I need to move a lot to lose weight. Even when you're not trying to lose weight, though, we all want to eat a healthy amount. We want to feel our bodies. We want to feel good. We want to perform, right? So, what's interesting about the body is the more you are active. So, this is a combination of, yes, lifting weights, which is its own unique signal to your muscles and to your bones, but also being active throughout the day and not sitting too long. Not sitting too long is an independent risk factor, right? So sitting too long is a mortality risk factor in and of itself. Once you kind of have all that going, that's part of your total expenditure. You now have this higher metabolic capacity, right? Which allows you to eat more carbs, better utilize glucose, and just kind of enjoy life more, in my
Right.
opinion, right? For your
Yeah.
lifestyle. So having said all that, like to me, the weighted vest thing, for a lot of my clients at least, it will be an add-on as part of their cardio and conditioning so that they can eat more and they can have a higher metabolic rate and they can have a more flexible lifestyle, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
kind of the thought there. Also, a lot of people as they get older, because they've experienced muscle loss and they're more sedentary and also more stressed, they tend to burn fewer calories in general too. So we try to bump that up as well. So just to put that on the side. Your question though was about getting strong and building muscle, right?
Yeah.
Using okay. So I think personally, like a weighted vest doesn't even have to be in the picture when you start. Like I have a hierarchy. It's like let's get in the gym 3 days a week for 45 minutes doing compound lifts, barbells, machines, I don't care, and just start there because that's going to get you like 80%. That's going to get you 80% for your muscle, bone, connective tissue, and conditioning, believe it or not, your cardio health. Then the walking comes in. Well, now once the walking's in, you have all these variables that you can toggle. And I personally been wearing a rucksack lately, inspired by you too, because I have one. It's like always loaded and I forget to take it sometimes.
Hmm.
So I added a reminder to my phone the other day, like throw on the rucksack when I go for a walk. Like I
Cool.
encourage people to do stuff like that because you're
Yeah.
going to forget. And when you do that, now you're supporting your lifting because you're not doing running, for example, or something that's higher impact on your joints or lower recovery, or something that causes muscle breakdown that kind of counteracts the adaptation from your lifting, right? So I think the weighted vest is a nice bridge from walking to higher level conditioning that supports recovery, supports lifting, supports calories, supports food. Now you can eat more. Now you can lift more. Now you can train harder. Now you get what I'm saying? It's like a
Yeah.
virtuous cycle. So it's
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. The wearing the weighted vest while doing weights, that's fine. I'm not here to really promote that big time because it's just an extra variation on a lift, let's call it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Does that
you
answer your
kind of,
question?
yeah, it does. It does. Thank you for
Okay.
that.
I tend to ramble sometimes. So
No,
I'm a
but
podcaster, right?
yeah, exactly. You're natural. More with Philip in just a moment, including his recommendation on how to incorporate weighted vests or ruck plate carriers into your workouts. But first, do you know anyone that just started wearing a weighted vest or mentioned that they're thinking about getting one? If so, please text this episode to them. It might help them learn how to optimize their workouts with a weighted vest, and it also helps the show to grow. Thanks. Okay, back to it. So you hit on a few different workouts. I'm curious if you have an opinion on if someone just picked up a weighted vest and they're curious about maybe starting to train with it. Do you have any recommendations on some sort of like how they can implement that into a workout routine?
Yeah, I would say if you're a beginner, and or you're older or you're deconditioned or whatever, uh, incorporate it into your walking first, right? Because that's going to give you tons of benefit for what we talked about with stabilization, with load, with expenditure, and just like in the gym with progressive overload with weights. Which, if you don't know what that means, if you're listening, just means adding a little challenge every time you do that same lift in the gym. So that could be adding 5 pounds, adding an extra rep, and just pushing yourself. Because what the body will do is it will recruit some of those hormones and some of those myokines to your muscles. And as you sleep, your muscles are going to get a little bigger. You're going to draw in some satellite cells, all this fun biological stuff that happens because your body's like, hey, I'm not strong enough and big enough to do this. Next time you go to the gym 2 days later, I'm going to push it again to the limit and it gets stronger and stronger. So with walking, you can do the same thing. Start with flat walking. If you're not walking already 7 to 10,000 steps without a vest, like you got to start there.
Hmm.
Is my opinion. You try to go too much too fast, the all or nothing psychology takes effect, and you're like, okay, this is too hard. And then I would add say weeks 3 to 4. It doesn't take long. Conditioning comes on and gets lost super fast. Like conditioning changes within days. I don't know if people are aware. Uh, Whereas muscle and strength happen over a longer period, right? So conditioning happens within days So add 5% of your body weight. So I guess that means if you're, let's do math, 150 pounds, that would be like 5 to 10 pounds, right? And keep it flat. And then now you can, over the next few weeks, keep that weight, but add an incline if that's possible, or if you're doing it on a treadmill, or if you have hills outside. Otherwise, just add weight again and then build toward 10%. So that's as simple as that. Keep a log. And then there are other variables you can manipulate, like speed. Speed is big. I know you're big on that. I know you talked about that on the show. Speed is so it's interesting, Spencer. There's work by Herman Poncer on metabolism and the effect of energy usage based on speed for different modalities of cardio. And when you look at running, running does not change based on how fast you go. So, and that's because you're leaving the earth. And so how do I explain it? Like you're effectively getting the same work done, you're just getting it done faster,
Hmm.
right? With walking, the faster you go, the more you're actually working per distance. So you can cover the same distance faster and now actually get a little more energy usage out of that. So now that's another variable you can, I don't know if people
Yeah,
were aware of that. It's kind of a cool thing. So just
that is
walking
interesting.
faster is a
Yeah.
great idea.
So on that point, so it's like, yeah, the work being done is your body pushing off and then catching the ground again. So do I have that correct?
Exactly, when you
Yeah.
run. So it's equivalent no matter how fast you go.
Yeah.
Obviously, your heart rate can go higher, so there's actually other variables at play, but it's
Sure.
not much of a difference. It's like a tiny curve up, whereas walking, it's like this big curve up. Going from 2 to 3 to 4 miles an hour is a massive difference to how your body experiences the effort.
Cool, man. I mean, it
Yeah,
makes sense. I've just never really put
it's
the
cool. It's really
mechanics
cool.
together and
Yeah,
what it's doing there. Yeah,
I
cool.
know. It's really neat.
I sorry to cut you off. I don't know. I
Well, no,
wasn't
no,
sure
and
if you're in the
that
middle of
was for,
anything.
like, a beginner. Now, if you're already active, I think this is where, like, we get into your world. Like, first of all, make sure you're following Spencer's podcast, guys. Like, if you haven't
Yeah.
hit follow in your app, do that now, and check out his episodes because 'cause you'll get the specifics on and he didn't pay me to say this, by the way, but, like, you'll get specifics on, the different ways to challenge yourself with rucksacks from, like, actually doing workouts, including if you're an outdoorsman or somebody who just loves the outdoors and doing all the sandbag stuff and all the hill stuff and all that. But also just thinking of it as your cardio bridge again. So now you're getting into, okay, what else do I do that's more exerting with the weighted vest? Now, if you get on a stationary bike and wear a vest, it's probably not going to be that effective, right? Because you're just sitting
Yeah,
on the bike.
right.
So it's more about the walking and the the incline and the weight. I don't know about you, like running and sprinting, that's a whole separate world that I think is pretty awesome for people who are into it. I would just say, like, be really serious about your footwear and
Yeah.
about your gait. Because
Yeah, yeah,
biggest source of injury in the world is running and soccer. Like, those 2 are way up there.
yeah. The torn ACLs left and right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta have the right you gotta be able to run on the balls of your feet, have the
Yeah.
right footwear, and it's maybe 1% of people can do it right,
I've
in my
had
experience.
I had a running coach on recently, and we discussed, the importance of not the importance, but like how beneficial rucking can be for
Mhm.
runners, like why runners should be rucking. And I think she hit the nail on the head. She was like, "I don't recommend running with a ruck. You're asking for a lot of problems if you're doing that." And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And there's like, if you do want to move fast with a ruck, you definitely need to keep your center of gravity pretty much stationary. You don't want to be, jumping with it, moving that load across. You kind of want to be shuffling and not dragging your feet, but not picking your feet all the way up like you would if you're like, jumping over a log or something like that, or running distance. So you want that shuffle, but yeah, excellent point there, Philip. I also wanted to ask you because I, when progressing, any thoughts on how quickly someone should progress? I've hit on this previously on the podcast. Basically, almost letting my take is letting your body almost feel like the workout's just easier to do. So then that's when you know. But any other scientific research done about how quickly to progress?
I think it's fairly equivalent um, to when you're lifting weights.
Hmm.
So I think where people go wrong on progression is not stimulating themselves enough with the additional challenge early enough. Now, you mentioned the comment about preserving muscle. I think if you literally lifted and rucked and like use your body the way you use it today, you're more or less assuming you do use resistance training and rucking, you'll probably roughly maintain your muscle mass for a decent while. right? Yeah,
Mhm.
probably for a long while, depending on hormonal situation and when you get older and stuff like that. Um, so it's not like you're going to get detrained or it's like bad for you. But I think when you lift weights or when you ruck, log what you're doing and log the key variables. So the key variables will be the weight, the distance, and the time, which gives you the speed, right?
Mhm.
And then the frequency is going to be important here because we know the body adapts, but then it de-adapts. And so you need to give it that stimulus on a frequent enough basis. So it depends on how frequently you're rucking.
Yeah,
So if you're
right.
going to go twice a week versus every day, then I would say almost every time you go, you can try to challenge yourself a little more. You should, because otherwise you might get detrained and you're just going to stay flat.
Yeah.
If you're going every day, I would say there's gonna be a lot more. You're gonna get more in tune with your body probably, and you're gonna be more adapted to it. And then you can slowly, maybe the next day you do the exact same thing, but a little faster. Then the day after
Yeah.
that, maybe you add a tiny bit of weight. Then you leave the weight and do it faster. You get what I'm saying? You play
Yep.
with each variable one at a time.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do it, but like in the gym, I don't think, hey, is my body ready? I think, hey, last time I successfully lifted this, so today I'm going to lift more, right? Obviously. That's
Yeah.
kind of my mentality,
Yeah.
not waiting for it. Now, if you're in a deficit, like a calorie deficit, you're dieting, your sleep is terrible, like some other recovery variable is off, well, then that's like a notch against that, right? Because
Yeah.
it's gonna give you a lower capacity to do it, but you might surprise yourself.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, it basically depends on where you are when you start rucking. So, or yeah, where you are with rucking in general, like whether you're a starter versus you've been doing it for X amount of weeks, months, what have you, and what your body can handle.
Yeah, and also your plates and stuff. Like if you
Yeah.
don't, unless you have a whole bunch of granular plates, like we run into this issue in the gym with dumbbells and barbells. A new person, I always forget. They'll say, "How do I go up only 5 or 10% on my dumbbells when they jump by, say, 5 or 10 pounds, and they're at these lightweight?" Oh, okay, you got to use micro plates,
Yeah.
or if you just can't do that, you have to just increase the reps.
Yeah.
So just like with your vest, if you have a 10-pound plate and then a 40-pound plate or something, I'm just
Yeah.
hypothetical, what are you going to do? You're going to go from 10 to 50? No, you either have to get some more like 2 pounds, 5 pounds plates or whatever, or change the other variables until that all catches up and the overall like tonnage or volume
Yeah.
matches that you can push the weight up now. We call that double progression.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the rucking world, we're pretty creative people, so we can figure
Yeah.
out how to add
Yeah. You
some
can get
weight.
rocks. You can get
Yeah.
something from the house, a can
Rice
of
bags.
soup, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Philip, I see we've hit on all of our topics that we wanted to hit today.
Cool.
I've had a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been great, Philip. But before we go, yeah, who is the, I guess, target client for Fitness Lab? Who do you serve the most, and who is it the most beneficial for?
Anybody who wants to build muscle and lose fat who doesn't have a lot of time, I cater to the over 40 crowd, but like honestly, anybody could benefit. So, Fitness Lab, thank you for bringing it up. It's actually an AI based app, but I've highly trained it. So, it's not just it's not just, what am I trying to say, renegade like ChatGPT pulling from whatever source. I actually trained it with my podcast, and I trained it with a ton of evidence, like actual sources of evidence. So what happens is it adapts to you and gives you a training program, and it gives you analysis of your eating, and then it will, depending on what you need, give you activities for like stress reduction or cardio or walking or whatever. It's super super adaptable. You can chat with it, all that fun stuff. So anybody who's really trying to improve their body composition through a variety of ways with their fitness and nutrition.
Awesome. And then I mentioned your podcast earlier in this episode, Wit and Weights. Do you have any specific episodes that kind of popped into your head while we were talking today that you might be able to recommend to the audience here?
I should have I should have come up with a specific list because I have so many episodes. Um, so let's see. I don't have any specifically about rucking. I might have one on weighted vest, but honestly, I would point people to some of the more recent episodes. You actually mentioned one, brain aging and barbells.
Yes.
I think that's a good one as an introduction to like why is lifting in general, resistance training in general, whether you're doing it with a ruck or weighted vest or weights, so important cognitively,
Yeah.
because there's so much great science now showing us that muscle has a unique benefit for physical health, and mental health and metabolic health.
Yeah.
Right, and it just moves the needle so much. So that's episode 474 that just came out, and then the one right before that from a nutrition side, 473, is the satiety diet, and it's all about what I think is the most important thing that allows people to stick to their nutrition, and that is, does it satisfy you? Does it keep you full? Does it help you manage your hunger? And I think that gets rid of all the noise of like, what should I eat? And like, should I cut this or that? No, let's not think in terms of restriction. Let's think in terms of satisfaction and adding in what we need and want. So I would start there, 474 and 473.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. And just to touch on the episode we were talking about before, it's mind blowing the impacts that muscle growth or gain can have on our cognition. That's something I never would have connected, never really thought about, but that was really fascinating. It was a good listen. I highly
Me
recommend the
too,
audience go
man.
check that out.
Because your comment earlier about like science and skepticism, I'm a science communicator, I guess you'd call me, but I don't have a degree in nutrition science. Like I have a
Mm.
PhD, but it's in leadership and management. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned to read papers doing that and how to do research, but
Yeah.
be open to the fact that you don't know what you don't know and there's new stuff that comes up, but also be aware of the sources. There's like, you just have to put it all together and find who you trust. And then at the end of the day, try things for yourself as well.
Great. Well, Philip, if someone wanted to reach out to you or check out Fitness Lab, where should they go?
Check out my podcast. Go to witsandweights.com, Fitness Lab, specifically witsandweights.com/app. And you can find all my stuff. You can reach out to me and then check out the podcast, of course.
Awesome. Well, Philip, again, can't thank you enough. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your insights.
It's been awesome, Spencer. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I'll keep listening and learning from you as well.
All right, that wraps up my conversation with Philip Pape. I included a link to Philip's podcast, Wits and Weights, into the show notes, specifically links for the 2 episodes he mentioned during our conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app so you're notified of new episodes. In next week's episode, I go into greater detail and discuss the differences between wearing a weighted vest versus a rucksack on your back, and when you should wear one instead of the other. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of The Rucker's Edge.